Welcome, everybody, to Pursuit Live. I'm your producer, Chris. Joining me, as always, is your creator and co host, Mr. Dave Hawkins.
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday night. How we doing?
And joining us tonight, we got a hell of a guest. A little something different here than you're used to, but that's what we love to bring you. So, joining us, Mr. Trevor Topken. Trevor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited for the chat.
So, if anybody didn't already know, Trevor is a tournament fisherman. All right, an accomplished tournament fisherman at that. So this is perfect for a late summer chat. All right, everybody knows here we might be big into hunting, but listen, we like to sling some line too. So I don't know about you guys. You ready to get into this?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Let's hit it,
All right.
Dave. Take it away.
Let's do it. Trevor, how you doing, buddy? Thank you for joining us tonight. For the beginning part here, for me and you, we like to introduce the guests, obviously get some background info on you, some of the generic stuff like where you grew up, how you got started into fishing, but then kind of tie that all together, really, like into present day, where like how did this all progress into where you're at now, and with the collegiate fishing and all that.
Yeah, man. So I grew up in northern New Jersey. Not the typical place for someone to start bass fishing and really get into it, but I guess growing up, my dad took me fishing a lot of saltwater fishing, and that kind of we'd go on trips here and there. And one year we went on a trip to Lake Okeechobee in Florida. I was pretty young, probably 11 or 12 years old. And I had bass fished a little bit before that, but live bait type stuff, no artificials. And that was the first time I used artificials. And I think from then is when I really kind of fell in love with that and started, having my mom and dad take me to ponds around the house, and I'd buy, the Senkos and all the beginner stuff from the stores and say, wow, this stuff actually really works, and got into it a lot from there.
Wait, are you calling Senko's beginner?
I mean, I still use Senkos to this day. Obviously, they're probably the best bass bait ever made, but it's what gets a lot of people into it. But yeah, I mean, no, we just my dad, like I said, he always took me fishing, so I kind of from a real young age I had that instilled in me, I guess. But yeah, and then I really got into it, just fishing ponds and stuff. I'd kayak fish.
Okay.
And when I was probably 14, my dad bought me a 14-foot John boat, so I can get out on some smaller lakes and whatnot and fish. And we decked it out pretty cool, and we fished a couple tournaments out of it and got our ass kicked, which was fun. But yeah, and it just progressed and progressed and progressed from there. Really got into like a junior bass club, fish junior tournaments and stuff like that. And then came time. I went through high school fishing a lot of tournaments, having some success at the local level, making a little bit of money. And then I decided I wanted to go somewhere to college to fish, or at least fish in college. And ended up going to the University of South Carolina, got on the fishing team there, and quickly had some good success. And it was just, I mean, really is just all the camaraderie with the guys and traveling into these tournaments, staying in Airbnbs or whatever it was, sometimes hotels. That's the most, that was the coolest part. Fishing was kind of a bonus, but yeah. And then I graduated in 2021, and I actually moved back down here to North Carolina about a year and a half ago, and just fish a lot of local tournaments. I haven't gotten anything real big in the past couple of years, but I think in the future, I'll dabble back into some Bassmaster Opens and whatnot and bigger tournaments. But yeah, man, that's kind of how it all happened.
All right. So I kind of want to fill the voids a little bit. So let's take it back to more like the good old college days. So obviously there's a tryout for the teams? Like how big is the team? Is it like maybe like 10 people on the team?
There's no tryout. It's like a sport club, so anyone can join. There's
Okay. Okay.
dues every semester or whatever for like jerseys and whatnot, and just expenses. But anyone can join. The way a lot of the colleges are different how they work with it. Some of them, mostly smaller schools down south, will treat bass clubs more like a real sport, and
Yeah.
the school will actually dump a whole bunch of money into the club. That's not how it worked at South Carolina, unfortunately. Um, so we got I think it was like a $500 semesterly stipend, which when you're traveling all over the southeast and even the Midwest and whatnot, like it doesn't really go anywhere. That's per club. So we probably had uh, anywhere between 5 and 8 teams, two man teams that go to each of these tournaments.
Okay.
So I mean, a $500 stipend doesn't really help a whole bunch, but we had good sponsors that would help out
Yep.
and whatnot. But yeah, you got to have your own boat or partner up with someone that has a boat. So yeah, I mean, pretty much, like I said, we had probably 30 or 40 guys in the club, but probably only like 10 to 15 that would really fish a lot of these bigger national college tournaments.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then our club, we would do 1 or 2 club tournaments every semester where we get like 3 guys to a boat, and some of those guys that don't get to fish the national tournaments would come on one of our boats and get to fish, just within the club, and that was always really fun. But yeah, no tryouts or nothing like that.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't like the right term. Because basically, what I was trying to do is because we were talking a little bit before the show. I think it's definitely more of a regional thing, something like this. Like you don't hear about it as much up in the Northeast where we are. So it's definitely a little bit more to the south or out to the west. So I was just kind of, for any of the listeners, I was really, and myself included, just really trying to pick your brain on them. And you hit on it a little bit. So it's basically like a 2-man team. You guys will go out for the most part, a 2-man team. Now, you guys are fishing in new areas all the time. How do you, like, whether it's a lake or a moving piece of water? How do you guys really dissect this? And what's your game plan when you get on the water? What are you looking for to really be effective?
Well, that's a great question. So for me, and a lot of other people, you try to do a lot of research before you ever get to start practicing at that lake. Um, you look on Google Earth. We have this thing called Navionics, which is an app that shows you a topographical map of the lake.
Okay,
Study that kind of stuff, and then even like just fishing forums and websites and any kind of information you can gather on the lake, just to kind of paint a picture of it before you even get there.
sure.
And then we would try. It was hard with classes and everything. We wouldn't really get to skip a lot of school like some of these
Yeah.
other schools do,
Yeah.
but we would try to get there and practice for at least a day or two before the tournament. So you go out, you get there as early as you can, and you practice as much as you can. A lot of times it was daylight to dark,
Right.
on the water, just trying to find something that would work, a pattern, or
Okay.
anything. Um, and then yeah, I mean, tournament comes and you try to run that pattern. That doesn't work. Scramble around and try to do something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it worked.
Hey man, that's at that point. That's hunting on a boat. You're scouting. You
Mhm.
literally you're doing everything a hunter would do beforehand.
Yeah,
Basically, that app that you talked about is basically what a hunter would use. Onyx, you know,
right.
but it's just showing you. Now, does that show you any like underwater features? Like, are you guys looking for any like structure underneath, or do you guys utilize any like local or private docks where maybe this would be like a breeding area for the fish? Anything like that help out?
Yeah, that app will show you a couple of those things. Like, it'll show you like old road beds underneath the water, stuff like that. Sometimes like foundations and stuff.
Okay.
But it won't show maybe like a rock pile or a brush pile somewhere. Um, Nothing like that. A lot of times we'll go out and practice and we'll just scan with our electronics for hours on end,
Right.
looking
Okay.
for that kind of stuff.
Okay. Chris, why don't you hop in the mix here, buddy? I know you have a lot more freshwater experience than I do, and I think you'd be a perfect fit for some of this conversation here early on.
Now, all right. So I do want to get into kind of tournament prep and getting into to running patterns on the water. Now, when you're in practice, is there a different attitude that, or I guess that's not the word. Is there like a different approach that you take where you're tossing different baits, seeing what they're hitting, or are you looking at maybe the bait fish that are in the native to the water? What are you doing to even before you hit the road for a tournament? Like, what are some things that you're doing to prep for that?
Yeah, the bait fish is a big thing. You got to find out what the main forage is on the lake for the bass. That determines what bait you're using and kind of what areas you kind of want to focus on. For example, a lot of the lakes in the south, well, some of the lakes in the south have blueback herring, which is a bait fish that was somehow introduced into these lakes from the Atlantic Ocean. And bass absolutely love them, but these herring, they're really nomadic, unlike a lot of the other bait fish that bass prey on around the country. So that changes the bass's behavior significantly on those specific lakes. So that's a big thing. And then, just like I said, Google Earth is an awesome tool because you can go back in time and look at different areas of the lake from when it might have been 10 feet low or high or whatever it is. So if it's 10 feet low, you can see certain pieces of cover and structure that are covered up maybe when you get there. So that's a cool thing. What else? That's about it really as far as before you get there.
Now, what would be something? Say day one, you back the boat down, you're at the ramp. What is something you're doing right from Jump Street when you get on the water?
In practice,
Yeah.
um, I think it depends on the lake, but a big thing is just cover a lot of water. It's important to move fast. Fish moving baits, you don't want to stay on one little bank for a few hours. That's no good. The biggest, like all these guys out here, they can catch fish really well. The biggest thing is finding where they live. That a lot of guys can't do. I've heard the saying a lot, and it definitely comes true for a lot of lakes. 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. So it really is. It's crazy. But yeah, the biggest thing is just cover, in practice anyway, cover a crap ton of water, and just move fast.
Now, I have a real hard question for you.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
Braid or mono?
Completely depends on the bait you're using.
Okay.
I will say 99% of the time I won't use mono. On all my spinning rods, um, I'll use braid to a fluorocarbon leader. The braid is just a lot more sensitive when you're using a spinning rod, which is typically going to be like a finesse presentation, something along the bottom, lighter. So you need that sensitivity. But you need that fluorocarbon leader just for the bait to be able to sink. Fluorocarbon sinks, braid floats. And also, I think at times, that fish can see the braid. So you want that fluorocarbon leader they won't be able to see. And then on my bait casting reels, it's probably like 80% just straight fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon's great for any type of moving bait, any type of bottom bouncing heavier like a jig or a Texas rig or something like that. Very low stretch, which is kind of what you want. Mono's got a ton of stretch. It's harder to feel.
Yep.
So yeah, and then I'll have a little bit of braid on a few of my reels for top waters and stuff like that, frogging, flipping, heavy cover and whatnot.
Okay.
How deep on average are you guys fishing, or does that completely vary as well?
Yeah, it varies. Time of year. just the lake and time of year you're fishing. In the springtime, most of the fish will be up shallow on the bank. And then as the summer goes on, and also in the wintertime, most of the fish are going to be out offshore off the bank. And, it could be still shallow offshore, but they're moving out there to feed on those summertime places. But a lot of times, like this time of year in the winter, like, it varies again, but most of the time I'm anywhere from 15 to 30 feet of water.
Okay.
Now we did have a question here, and I guess this would be an average question, not very specific. Where are you finding most of your big fish? Are they around docks, shallow water, deep water? Are they in the weeds? If you could only pick one spot on a lake,
Right.
what's your go-to for a big fish?
My go-to for a big fish would be like flipping submerged vegetation. That's just what I love to do. The question's pretty vague, but I just love to flip vegetation. Unfortunately, down around me, none of our lakes have any vegetation because they killed it all, unfortunately. But around here, I mean, even in the summertime, it's a big thing to, like I said, a lot of guys will fish out deep. That's good for numbers of fish, but a lot of times in the summer, some of the biggest fish will still be up there shallow, eating bluegills and stuff like that up shallow. So I'll throw like a top water, like real shallow on the bank, top water, swim jig, stuff like that, um, for those bigger fish. But like I said, I mean, heavy cover, flipping vegetation or frogging, throwing a buzz bait on the bank, is what I like to do for a big one.
Okay.
Is there any type of gamesmanship? Like, obviously, is it a staggered start with all the boats, or does everybody launch at one time?
Yeah, it's a staggered start. There's usually, if it's a bigger tournament, they'll have different flights.
Okay.
And so there'll be like 5 or 10 flights, whatever it is.
Okay.
And they'll call, and everyone's got a boat number. So they'll just call boat numbers one by one. And then in between flights, they may wait like 5 minutes, or they might not wait at all, or however it goes. And then the guys in the later flights will have a later check-in time.
Gotcha. So, like, is there any gamesmanship between obviously the anglers where it's almost like you don't want to go right to your honey hole, or do you want to go right there, or you almost like decoy, you go to one of your secondary spots hoping somebody follows you, and then you peel off and go to where like you got good fish? Like, is there any tactics like that comes into play?
To a degree, yeah, there is. I don't know about like, decoying a spot or something. That might happen rarely. Probably more on like the pro level stuff. That I'm sure that happens from time to time.
Okay.
But I mean, honestly, tournament fishing, just as far as gamesmanship goes, like it is all like 90% of it's a mental game. It's all about this decision making, when to go to what spot, when to leave a spot, how long to stay, and everything like that.
Sure. Now, if another boat comes up on you, like, that's all legal, right? Like, you guys could almost be fishing, or is that like part of the ethics of it? You kind of don't go too close to another angler.
Yeah, that's a big thing, is ethics with that. Nowadays, a lot of that has been lost.
Yeah.
Back before I was really into it, that stuff did not fly ever.
Yeah.
But now it happens. There is a rule in most tournaments, most bigger tournaments. There's a rule that if you're anchored, another boat can't come within 50 feet of you, or 50 or 50, whatever it is. But other than that, I mean, yeah, sometimes guys will pull right up on you, and you got to stand your ground.
It's a good way to get a bunker stag across the bow.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, Chris, again, I'm going to tap you in, buddy, because like I said, I know you have a lot more freshwater experience. I'm just interested at the different levels. You had mentioned Trevor Bassmasters before, so I kind of want to take it almost like step by step, like what, like double A, triple A, like break it down in baseball terms for all the different levels,
Yeah,
that you fished in.
sure. So I'll start off by saying there's two major tournament organizations right now. There's Bassmaster, BASS, which is the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, and there's MLF, which is Major League Fishing. Major League Fishing bought a company called FLW, Fishing League Worldwide, back in, I want to say 2019, which was like the previous standard along with Bassmaster. But MLF came in and bought them. So within those two organizations, you do have kind of like you were saying, like a single A, double A type tiered system like that. Personally, I have more experience fishing the MLF side of things, or previously FLW. I fished more kind of with them at the collegiate level and what they call the BFLs, which is the simply stands for Bass Fishing League. I think now it's the Phoenix Boats BFL. Back when I fished it, it was the Walmart BFL. But that's kind of like a single A type thing. The regional tournaments, pretty decent competition. It's like a $250 entry fee. And so I did a bunch of those, like honestly through high school. I had some pretty decent success doing that. When you get up above the BFLs on the MLF side, you got the Toyota Series, which is instead of a 1-day tournament at the BFLs, it's now a 3-day tournament, much higher entry fee at like $1,500 around there. Really much better competition as well, and higher payouts, obviously. I haven't personally fished any Toyota Series events, but I probably will here in the near future.
Okay.
And then above that, you have the Bass Pro Tour, which is the professional level on the Major League Fishing side, and that's your Jake. Well, I don't know if you guys have heard a lot of these guys, but your Jacob Wheelers, he's the best one going right now.
Your Kevin Van Dam's.
Kevin Van Dam was on
showing my age a little bit with that.
Yeah, no, Kevin was on the BPT for the first 5 years it was around. He retired after last year, so he's actually done tournament fishing now. But and he started his career at Bassmaster, fished bass for probably, I don't know, around 20 years, maybe actually probably more than that. Won 4 classics, won a crap ton of tournaments, obviously, and when MLF bought FLW back in 2019, there was a major shift. A lot of the Bassmaster pros, like Kevin and Wheeler and a bunch of the big name guys, they moved over to MLF from Bass because of a bunch of promises that were made and greener pastures and blah blah blah. And a lot of that stuff never came true, unfortunately. But Bass was left with still some big name guys, and they brought some guys from the old FLW tour over to Bass. And, in the past 5 years, they've obviously gotten a bunch of rookies in from their AAA league, the Bassmaster Opens, that are just phenomenal anglers. I think I'd put up the Bass Elite guys now up against the BPT guys any day, and I think they'd whoop them pretty good. But that's neither here nor there. But anyway, back to the original question. On the Bassmaster side, you have I guess, kind of the single A, more the grassroots would be the Bass Nation. I fished a handful of Bass Nation tournaments. That's kind of for the weekend angler, kind of like the BFLs. But what's cool about the Bass Nation is you can make it through each year. You can fish your regionals, get to the national championship. From the national championship, the top 3 guys in that go to the Bassmaster Classic, which is really cool. And the winner of the national championship gets an invite to the Elite Series. So that's really cool. I fished one of those events earlier this year, and actually last month in July, up on Lake Champlain in New York. One of the regionals unfortunately did not make the national championship, not by much, but I will be doing more of those next year. So you got those Bass Nation tournaments, and then from there they go right to the Bass Opens. And that's the main way to qualify for the Elite Series is through the Bass Opens. The top 9 in points after each year go to the Elite Series. And those are hot. Those are $1,800 entry fee tournaments, higher payouts around the whole country. 3-day tournaments too.
Man, you really broke that down. It's amazing. Like before we spoke tonight, I had no idea all the different levels of tournaments that are out there. So, we
Yeah.
appreciate you breaking it down like that because again, like we spoke before the show. Obviously, we're a hunting primarily show, but we're all outdoors men and women. We've all fished one way or another, and it's really interesting to hear your story about this. So that's exactly why we wanted to have you on. Chris,
Yeah,
how we doing, buddy?
Well, we did have a question here, and it was something that I was going to ask as well. What out of all the tournaments that you fished, what is your to date? What has been your favorite tournament, especially during your college days?
That's a pretty easy one. In 2021, my last year fishing collegiately, I had a tournament down on the Harris Chain of Lakes in Florida, and didn't get the win. I ended up coming in second place out of a 200 and something boat field, but I had the biggest limit by far I've ever weighed in a tournament or even caught, not even in a tournament. Weighed in 30 pounds and 1 ounce for 5 fish. So 6-pound average, which is, for a kid from New Jersey, that's crazy. But
Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
yeah, no, it was an amazing day. I think I had 3 days of practice for that one, which was awesome. But after practice, I was pretty sure I was going to catch them good. I had fish doing a bunch of different stuff. Some bed fish that were up spawning, a couple big ones doing that, and then also fish offshore in offshore grass clumps. And I never caught any big ones in practice on the grass offshore, but I was getting like 50 to 70 bites a day doing that, which was awesome. But I was going into the tournament thinking it was going to be a good one. Maybe I can catch a couple of these big bed fish and then fill out my limit offshore and have maybe 20 pounds and qualify for the national championship that way. But ended up, we ran straight to one of the biggest bed fish we thought we had. And I caught her on like my 5th cast, and it was an 8.5 pounder. And from there we just ran around. I ended up catching like 2 or 3 big ones out of the grass offshore, which was really unexpected. And yeah, it was just an absolute dream of a day.
Sounds. Now, on the flip side of that, have you come across a body of water or a lake that you fished a couple of times where you just haven't figured it out? It almost gets the best of you if you fished it a couple of times.
I know there's a bunch of those. I got to think of what's the biggest. Man, I had a couple tournaments on Cherokee Lake in East Tennessee that I never really clicked with that place.
Why do you think that was?
It was just a shithole, man.
That's why it get me, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is it water conditions? Like, was it like a brackish water scenario, or it was just tough fishing? Which can be?
No, it was just tough fishing. I mean, like, guys still caught them, obviously. I fished 2 tournaments there. One was in May and one was in October. And the one in May, it was post spawn. That lake has smallmouth and largemouth and spotted bass too. And we were trying to target smallmouth offshore and just could not get anything going. Day 1 of the tournament, we only weighed in 1 fish. Day 2, we decided to scrap everything we had in practice, and we went up the river flipping bushes. And like, we had a better day. We weighed in a limit, but it was still small. So I looking back on that one, I really don't know where I went wrong. And then the one in October was just, fall fishing in the South is usually pretty horrendous. That one was really tough too, man. The guys that won that, or the guys that did well in that tournament, caught smallmouth offshore. I never found that in practice. And I ended up weighing in largemouth off the bank, throwing the top water, but I didn't do any good in that one either.
Well, when in doubt, just stuff weights down their mouth,
Yeah, right. We got weights and fish.
Yeah. Unreal. Man.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was wild.
That hung
Yeah,
around for a while too. That no matter where you
yeah.
turn on social
National
media.
news and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Now-
crazy.
Now let me ask you this: have you ever experienced anything even remotely like that in your days on the trail?
No, I haven't. I've never experienced anyone like blatantly cheating.
Yeah, is that really like a one-off thing? Like that is not really that's
You
not
know,
what happens, right?
it. I'm sure it happens more than we think.
He just got caught. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, guys will do anything. Guys get desperate; they'll do anything to win. But
Same thing with hunting. People do some fucked up shit to get a deer on.
yeah,
They get
this is-
obsessed.
yeah. There's a lot of
Crazy.
messed up people in the world, but no,
Simply
nothing like
put.
that. I mean, I've heard of people that'll put out fish cages and stuff. They'll put fish in cages before the tournament. I've heard of that stuff happening here, like very rarely, but it happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. There is one. I'm gonna hold on, Cindy. I'm gonna hold on to your question from Instagram. I'm curious about. Let's break down. We talked a couple times about the weigh-in process. What is that? Do you need X amount of fish to go to the scale house? Do you need X amount of pounds? Like, what is the process for that, or does it vary for each tournament? Like, is it a 5-fish limit, a 3-fish limit? How does that work?
Yeah, the majority of tournaments will be a 5-fish limit. Some tournaments will be less, but 90+%, you're trying to weigh in 5 fish.
Okay.
And you can weigh in less if you don't catch 5. You're probably not going to do very well depending on the lake and the time of year. But yeah, 5 fish. Obviously, state laws will determine minimum length. So a lot of places it's 12 inches, a lot of places it's 14 inches or 15 maybe sometimes. But yeah, you check in, you come in, there'll be a guy waiting either floating on a boat out there or on the end of the dock. You'll check in, tell him your boat number so he knows that you're there and on time. If you're late, you'll get a penalty. And you bag up your fish and come by the tanks, and they have 5 or 6 big tanks filled up with water and dissolved oxygen that they're pumping in there as well.
Okay.
You'll hold your fish in the tanks and wait in line, and you go up and weigh them on the stage, and yeah, that's how it goes.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna real quick, and then I'll turn it back over to Chris, so I don't forget. We had a question from Instagram. If you were to go back to college, for specifically fishing, what school would you want to fish for?
Well, I don't think I could. I mean, I loved my experience at South Carolina. So if I had to do it again, I don't think I could say I'd go anywhere else, man. South
Okay.
Carolina is awesome.
That's fair enough.
That being said, there, like I was saying earlier, there's schools that invest more in the teams and make it a little bit easier for people to compete and whatnot. But I don't think I'd trade that for my experience at South Carolina.
Well, it sounds like you had the time of your life, man. And like I said, I played travel baseball, and you get on these tournaments, you get on the road with the guys, and it's those memories probably more than the fishing that you're going to remember longer, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without a doubt. So I could definitely relate to that. So, all right. So we're going to bring Chris back in here, and we'll get into some more of the nitty-gritty part of the fishing.
All right, so power sticks. What are your thoughts on those power the power sticks in the back of the boat? Do you like them? Or
power poles?
Yeah, power poles.
Power poles. Yeah, I've got power poles on my boat. They are they're great to have for a couple reasons for me. Obviously they're shallow water anchors, so they're only going to anchor you in 8 feet of water or less. Or some companies have, I guess the Minn Kota Allens go down to 10 or 12 feet, but power poles, you get 8-footers, and then they do have 10-footers as well. I've got 8-footers on my boat. if I'm out in the middle of the lake fishing offshore, I'm not going to use my power poles, obviously. So a lot of the time they're obsolete, but when you are using them, they're really important and useful. Anytime you're bed fishing, sight fishing for spawning bass, pretty essential to have power poles keep you in place. And then obviously, honestly, just something as simple as like I don't use, I hardly ever use ropes anymore when I'm tying my boat up at the dock. I'll just stick
Okay.
my power tools down and go get the truck and put it on the trailer. Like that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now we'll get back into a little bit of tactical stuff. If say you only have one bait to pick, that's it. That's all you're allowed to fish with the rest of your life. What setup are you going with?
Good question. I have to think about this one for just a second. If I'm picking based on what I really love to do, I'd probably pick a jig, just a skirted jig, half ounce. Um, but if I'm picking on what I think would be most versatile around the country and catch me the most bass anywhere, it'd probably be something like a drop shot or a shaky head. Um, a drop shot is just a worm on a hook, and then about 10 or 12 inches down, you have your weight. So that weight sits on the bottom and the worm sits up above it. And then a shaky head is just pretty much a jig head with a worm on it. Those are really versatile baits. You can fish them up shallow, you can fish them out deep, and they get bit all the time. They're finesse presentation. So those are good bite getters. But a jig is a big fish bait. It's really fun to crack them on a heavy setup with a jig. So that's what I'd pick in that situation.
I actually got a question from Instagram, Chris, while we're on tackle. Have you ever fished a Texas rig? And I'll add to that whether you have or haven't, if you could break down what a Texas rig is.
Yeah. Yeah. Texas rig, one of my favorite things. It kind of goes along with the jig, very similar to jig fishing. Um, a Texas rig is just a wide gap worm hook uh, that you'll hook into a creature bait or a worm or anything like that, and you'll have a tungsten. Well, sometimes tungsten, sometimes lead. I prefer tungsten for the feel, and it's more dense, so you could have a smaller weight, or by dimension smaller weight in a heavier package, if you know what I'm saying. But with just a bullet weight just above it, a lot of times I'll peg that with a bobber stop so the weight can't move. Um, but yeah, Texas rig's awesome. Use it all the time. Great bait.
You could still use lead weights in these tournaments?
Yep. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think
Chris,
a couple
I'm drawing
states.
a blank. Who was it? Wicked Weights we were across from
Yeah.
at the Empire Show.
Yeah.
Have you heard of them? Wicked Weights.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
We had a good experience with them. We shared like across the aisle from us at an outdoor show in New York, and again, not knowing a lot about it, but I was we talked to them for a couple of days, and so if you're interested in some tungsten, we would definitely recommend Wicked.
Okay.
They seem like a pretty good product.
Quick shout out to Wicked Weights, I guess.
Why not? It came to me out of nowhere, man. But figured if we were going to mention it, why not?
All right. So now when it comes to your boat selection, as far as bass boats, what are you looking for in a prime setup in a bass boat?
So nowadays, I mean, most boat brands, or really all bass boat brands, they all make really good boats. I run a Skeeter. I have for a while. I'm on my second Skeeter now. Um, as far as what I look for me, the biggest thing is honestly the engine. I'm a diehard Yamaha guy. Certain brands you can't order or get with a Yamaha, so that kind of throws those away for me. But your Skeeters, your Phoenix, Bass Cat, those are probably the main three that you can run a Yamaha on, and they're all great boats. Um, Other than that, man, I mean, just fishability, being able to maneuver the boat well with the trolling motor, the ride, obviously. I have a 21-foot Skeeter, rides like a dream. It's a tank through waves. But I mean, most boat brands are like that nowadays. They all build really good products.
They seem like they haul ass. Like you watch on TV, these guys got to be doing 50 miles an hour on some.
Oh no, more than that.
Faster than that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So a full-size bass boat, which is either a 20 or a 21 footer, will have a 250 horsepower engine on it.
That big on
And
the
then,
back. Wow.
yeah, we can do upwards of 70.
Whew.
Yeah.
As Ricky Bobby goes, I want to go fast.
I'll go fast. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
That's fast on the water. I mean, if nobody's ever been on the water, 70 miles an hour, whether you're on a jet ski or a boat, you're moving.
Yeah.
You're cooking.
I'm not a huge speed guy. As far as like worrying about that extra couple miles per hour, some guys are. Certain brands you'll be able to get your boat to 75, 76, 77 even. My Skeeter right now, it's a 21 footer, so it's a little bit bigger than what a lot of these guys are running with their 250s. I top out right at 70. And I think I could play around with my jack plate and my prop and whatnot, and probably get an extra, and my weight load, probably get an extra mile an hour or two. But I mean, I'm not too worried about it. 70 is pretty fast enough for me.
How much gas do you guys store on the boat?
50 gallons. Most boats have around a 50-gallon tank. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess let's say it's check-in day. You're coming into that final time, and you got to make it back to the dock. I mean, have you had a scenario where you really had to throttle down to get back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not just at the end of the day. I mean, you got 8 hours a day to catch the biggest bag you can. So every time you move throughout the day, you gotta be moving pretty quick as far as driving and fishing goes.
Right, makes sense. Yeah, you're on the clock the minute you get in the water.
Yeah.
Again, from Instagram, Cindy. Do you happen to know Cindy Pia? She's been asking all these questions, and they're really good questions.
Cindy Pia?
Yeah, that's all right. I'm just. It's she's got a lot of great questions tonight. What's your best filament? And she had a question about the engines. Was it two 250s or a single 250? Probably a single.
Single 250.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. What's your best filament?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, but I figured I asked. I guess something about the line that you were using.
Yeah,
I guess we touched something earlier. It was a combination, though.
Yeah, fluorocarbon and braid on spinning reels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cindy, if you want, so you can elaborate on that. What you meant by that? We can ask Trevor. But we'll keep it going. What else you got, Chris?
All right, so what's your preferred style of fishing? Do you like just weigh it and send it back, or are you really you want to bring it to the dock? What do you feel is more fair in a tournament to actually stick them in the live well and bring them back, or do you actually believe that just weighing it and releasing it is probably a better thing for the fish?
So I guess you're asking, certain tournaments will have a catch, weigh, release format. Most don't. Most are you bring in your fish. So if it's a weigh, at the dock, at the stage tournament, you can't just weigh them on your boat and throw them back. You got to bring them in.
Yeah, but which do you prefer as a fisherman?
I prefer to bring them in because it's kind of like the tradition, and it's just kind of what I've always done. I've actually never fished a tournament that was catch, weigh, and release format. They're getting a little more popular now, and I think it's cool. It definitely cuts down on fish mortality rates. But at the end of the day, most of these tournaments carry like a 98% live release rate, unless it's a middle of July tournament in the South and guys aren't taking care of their fish. You're going to have some die. But that's just part of it, man. I mean, fish are pretty resilient, especially largemouth bass. They're pretty resilient. So I don't think it's a huge problem. But yeah, I prefer weigh-in tournaments.
All right, I got a little clarification from Cindy. I asked her, would you like me to ask on what specific brand he uses? So, do you have a certain brand of line across the board that you use, or does it matter on whether it's mono or braid?
Yeah, I prefer Sunline is the brand. Um, and I'll use their braid and their fluorocarbon.
Okay. Yeah, definitely good question. She's the one been chiming in with all the questions. That's what we're saying. It's a very interactive show when we do this setup. All these questions are coming from Instagram from the viewers, so it's good. We have our show here, and then the comment section it kind of takes over, and everybody gets to interact, which is what we want. What haven't we covered, John? Is there anything you would like to mention, Trevor, that we haven't touched on yet?
I got a couple questions.
Okay, keep going.
Now you're primarily a bass fisherman, but do you get in? What other types of fishing do you enjoy?
I enjoy all types of fishing. I love it, whatever it is. I'm pretty competitive, just at heart. So the bass tournaments are kind of what I got into. There's not, there's other types of tournaments, of course, saltwater and different fish tournaments, but bass is kind of the most prominent. It's kind of what I grew up watching on TV. When I was young, ESPN owned Bassmaster, so every Sunday the Bassmasters would be on ESPN, and that's what I would watch. But I mean, I enjoy all types of fishing. I like I said, I don't get to do it as much because I'm so focused on bass fishing. But if I get to, saltwater fish for stripers or fluke or, down south here in Florida and for snook and tarpon and stuff like that, it's so much fun. It's awesome. And then I also enjoy trout fishing too, a lot. So a couple times a year I'll get to the trout stream and catch a few trout. Enjoy that as well.
Now you're speaking Chris's language.
So what you're saying is that if you were to go back to college, to circle back to Cindy's question and maybe change the way you fish, you'd pick up fly fishing, right?
I don't think I said that. Yeah, no. I have barely fly fished, but never really got into it.
Okay. Now, have you ever thought? Listen, it's not about catching fish when you're fly fishing.
No,
it's not about the fish. Measure the story, not the inches, Dave.
Touche. Yeah. We did have a question come through. Have you ever thought, or have you guided any new anglers, Trevor, or help somebody get out on the water?
Yeah, I have. Just besides, like, I've taken a few of my friends fishing that don't fish. Besides that sort of stuff, I actually did run a guide business up in Connecticut when I lived in New York. I'd fish on Candlewood Lake in Connecticut, like really kind of world-class smallmouth and largemouth bass fishing. Nice. And I guided there for a year, just kind of in between college and moving down here. And that was really fun. Put a lot of novice anglers on some big fish. That was awesome.
Nice. Good for you, man.
Yeah, it was cool.
So, have you ever thought about getting more into another type of fishing other than bass fishing, like maybe say saltwater, like getting into saltwater tournaments?
To be honest, not really. No. I like just kind of saltwater fishing a few times a year, kind of keep it kind of fresh like that. Yeah. But I mean, it'd be cool, fish a saltwater tournament here and there. But no, I haven't really thought about it.
Well, it's almost like you want to keep that at like the hobby phase, like the recreational phase. It's almost like a break from your freshwater work duties, almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. How do you feel about the presence of freshwater anglers? Like, do you think it's in a good position as far as the amount of people that are doing it? Do you see it on the decline? Is it on the rise? Maybe.
I think so this year there's been some controversy as far as the high level tournaments go. It's been an interesting year. on the pro side of things, but that doesn't really have too much to do with the question. But as of the last 10 years, it's definitely on the rise.
Okay.
High school and college fishing are absolutely booming.
Good.
The amount of college and high school teams has like skyrocketed in the last 10 years. We see high school tournaments with over 400, 500 boats in them,
Wow.
and schools on the waiting list trying to get in. And it's a lot of the same at the college level too.
What do you think is a contributing factor to that?
I don't know. Some of these tournaments are getting more coverage. Like the college tournaments the national championship will be, live on TV and whatnot. The advancements in electronics could have something to do with it. Now we have this thing called live sonar, which shoots out in front of the boat and you can see in real time
Really?
what's going on up to 100 feet in front of your boat. That could have something to do with it. That has really taken the industry by storm. It's dominating just about any tournament under the sun right now. This guy's catching fish off of live sonar. We've learned that fish don't really, well, they still do, but there's a huge population of fish that, and when I say fish, I mean largemouth, smallmouth, or spotted bass that live out in the abyss in the middle of the lake, and they never come shallow to spawn, and they just stay out there all year, which, but before live sonar, that never was a thing that was known. And so like and live sonar has undoubtedly made it easier to catch fish just in a general sense. So I think, when you show a kid that it's almost like a video game.
Yeah.
So I think young kids like kind of gravitate to that a little bit more than if they're just out there floating around casting a nothing and not catching anything. They could actually see a fish reacting to their bait in real time, and I think they probably. And I don't know if that really has anything to do with the boom recently. It might have a small effect, but I think young kids probably gravitate to that more than they would if it wasn't there.
I
Now,
would love to know. Sorry, Chris. I would love to hear the other side of people that are maybe opposed to that type of technology.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of them.
Yeah, that would be a
I guess
very
it would be the same type of argument as people making against trail cams, Dave.
with the cell cameras, right? That's the connection I was going to say. Yeah, like if your cell camera could live feed, but again, from a hunting standpoint, okay, you have a live feed. You got to get your gear together. You got to get whatever. You got to get in the woods. You got to get in there. There's no guarantees at that point. I had
Right.
no idea that existed in the fishing world. When you just saw that blew my mind.
Right. Yeah, it's the same thing. There's no guarantees. And this year especially, and even the past couple years, you can tell. Like I have that technology on my boat. You can tell that fish are getting used to it.
Really?
Oh yeah, they're extremely difficult to catch a lot of the times. And I mean, I'm not the best with it, but a lot of the time I can tell if that little blob I'm seeing on the screen is a bass or if it's a catfish or if it's a carp, etc. And even being able to do that, I could put my bait right in front of them and they'll want nothing to do with it. So there's no guarantee. A lot of the lakes around here, like you'll throw at 100 bass before one bites. It's pretty crazy.
Now, what do you prefer, Simrad or Garmin electronics?
So I have two different manufacturers on my boat. I run Lowrance, which is they're under the Simrad umbrella under Navico. Lowrance at my dash, I've got two 12-inch Lowrances at my helm. And then up front, I run one 9-inch Lowrance to share waypoints with my dash units. And then I've got my live sonar unit is a Garmin. Garmin was the first to come out with the live sonar, and they've been kind of the standard. I think they probably have the best going right now. The Lowrance has a really good live sonar unit too. But yeah, I run Garmin for that. So I got Lowrance and Garmin.
Okay.
Is there any state regulations on that between state to state? Like,
For the live sonar,
will some states allow it, other states won't allow it?
not as of now. I've heard like rumors of some states trying to ban it, but no, not as of now.
Okay.
Now, I Cindy asked another question, and I'm pretty sure based on some of these questions, Cindy sounds like she's into saltwater a little bit. How deep does your sonar setups go?
So typically, as far as on my helm units, if I'm using 2D sonar or side imaging, which shows what's out, 100 feet to the left and right of the boat, it's not live. It's just like 2D, but out to the sides. They can read up to a couple 100 feet of water. I'm rarely or really never side imaging or looking on those units that deep. The sweet spot for me with those is probably like 20 to 30 feet of water, and you can see really good detail of what's on the bottom at that point. But I mean, and as far as the live goes, kind of the same thing. You can see down to 100 or 200 feet. The big thing with the live is just being able to see out in front of the boat, up to 100 or 120 feet pretty well.
Now, Tommy had a question here. I guess we'll circle back to gear. What's your favorite rod setup? Like, say you got to take one rod. That's it. That's the rest of your life. Is you're gonna have this rod in your hand. What kind of setup are you thinking about going with?
So that kind of goes along with the question you asked earlier about the one bait, because each bait is kind of gonna call for a different rod action, power, length, and whatnot. So going off that, if I had a jig, right, which is what I said I would take for the rest of my life, good setup for a jig's like a 7 foot to a 7'3" medium heavy power rod with a fast tip. The fast tip means the vast majority of the rod is just backbone, and then you have a little bit at the end that you'll have your bend in and your sensitivity in. When you start talking about, this is just a little background on different rod actions, but when you start talking about like your treble hook baits, your crank baits, and your jerk baits and stuff like that, you're going to want more of a moderate tip, a rod that'll load up more down toward the butt of the rod. So, instead of having all that backbone, you've got a lot more bend and a little bit less backbone down toward the butt. So that allows that fish to kind of get the bait better when you have a treble hook, because, for whatever reason, when a fish strikes a treble hook bait, it's usually moving. So that fish will be able to get that bait better when that rod's got more bend in it and more of a parabolic bend to it. It just gives a little more,
Okay. How many rods do you keep on the boat, like on any given tournament? On average.
Yeah, I'll have 15 or 18 rods in the boat. In the box. I'll try to keep as few as possible on the deck at a time. But there's times when I'll have 10 rods on the deck, or maybe even 12 rods on the deck.
Do you have them preset, like everything's pre-tied with a setup? Is that the reason for that? Or is that mechanical failures, or both?
Yeah, both, but mostly just because I got, if when I'm practicing for a tournament, that's more of a thing I'll do, because you want to go through a rotation of baits and different weights and setups just to see if there's anything they're really keying on. But yeah, as far as in a tournament, I like to have it as clean as I can, as few rods on the deck as I can. And if I only have one or two rods on the deck, that means I'm pretty dialed into what's going on. So that's a good thing too.
Interesting. Very interesting. We got to stay in touch, man. I am so intrigued with this whole setup. We got to anything you do in the near future. I want to stay in touch with you. We get you live streaming it. Then we're talking.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
You just
Hell
got to
yeah.
broaden your horizons, Dave, and leave the island once in a while.
Hey, I was very upfront about it. I have no freshwater background at all. Yeah, I grew up saltwater fishing, but it's I love it. I'm very happy with the way this episode turned out tonight, and taking the time to break it down really well. Honestly, yeah, everything you explained tonight, really in detail, which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
We are at that time, gentlemen. Unless there's anything else we want to cover, by all means.
I don't know. I think we covered all the questions. I think everybody was good with this.
Yeah. Everybody on Instagram, thank you for all those questions. That was great. Trevor, for this, well, while we wrap it up, if there's any social media, any YouTube, any Instagram pages you want us to link up, you can let everybody know now where they can find you.
Yeah, just follow me on Instagram, Trevor_Topken.
Okay.
That's about it, man.
All right. Very cool. Well, we appreciate you very much for taking some time out. And honestly, like I said, really breaking it down to us, really bringing to light, something that we don't talk about often, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I had a good time.
Good. That's what we want to hear. We're definitely going to stay in touch with you, buddy, without a doubt.
Definitely.
Take us out.
We'd talk about it more if you'd get off the island, Dave.
All right, shut up. Yeah, producer Chris, do you think, buddy? Close us
All
out.
right. So, everybody, thank you again for tuning in tonight. Trevor, thank you so much for taking some time out to chat with us tonight. And as Dave said, we're definitely going to stay in touch because this is I like bass fishing. I love fishing. So, if we can get Dave out on the water one day and let him experience it, I think it would be life changing for him.
I'm down.
Come on down to North Carolina. I'll take you guys out anytime. Or I'm even up there a couple times a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Catch us every week, 8 o'clock on Friday nights, right here on Pursuit Live. If you stuck with us this far, stick with us because the rest of this year is going to be awesome. So, with that, everybody have a nice night, and we'll see you again next week.
That's it.